Well, hello, and welcome to the first lesson of the Focus on Content course. And that's content with a K, Kentico Content. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless creator. As always, you can get a hold of me right there. You can see Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. Any questions you have, feel free to reach out to me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Today I have a special guest. His name is Richard Shackleton. He's a UI architect at Next.js. He's going to show us how to implement gated content in Kentico Content using Next.js. And we're going to talk all about what is gated content, what does that mean, and then how do you go about implementing it in Kentico Content. But before we do that, as always, let me go ahead and show you Headless Creator. Feel free to go there, sign up, free registration. For those of you watching already in Headless Creator, you know how it works. For those of you watching outside of Headless Creator, you'll find this lesson under all courses, under Focus on Content right there. And then you'll see it in here. And you're going to get many more lessons. The course is free. So just register and you'll get all the lessons as we progress during the weeks. So like always, and then I also want to remind you that I have the Content Modeling Weekly, which is Headless CMS agnostic, is to teach you how to create scalable content models that support single source of truth and will work with any Headless CMS regardless of which Headless CMS you have. So, all right, so that takes care of the marketing portion of this section. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to restart the lesson here, because for the on-demand version, when you come back to the site, it'll be a nice clean version without any of the marketing. We'll just jump in. So I'm going to redo the intro, and we'll see you guys in just 1 minute. Well, hello, and welcome. Let me remove that. There we go. Welcome to the first lesson of the Focus on Content. That's Kentico Content course. I am Marcelo Lewin, the Headless Creator. As always, get a hold of me right there, Marcelo at headlesscreator.com. I'm going to have to figure out how to make that a little bit cooler because I always mess this up. But just get a hold of me if you have any questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Today, for this lesson, I have a really special guest. His name is Richard Shackleton. He's a UI architect at NetConstruct, and he's going to talk about gated content and how to implement that in Kentico Content using Next.js. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So let me introduce Richard so we can get him in here. There we go. Richard, hello there.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Welcome to the lesson. Thank you for doing this. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
So where are you located?
Leeds, England, United Kingdom.
In
so
England.
In the north, as we'd say.
Okay. Yeah. I kind of caught that accent right there. And I like your background too. Very cool background.
Yeah, it's definitely not from a game or anything.
So why don't you give us a little background about yourself? Like, how did you get to become a developer? And then how did you get into Kentico Content? And that's it.
Sure. So originally, I actually studied game design and then realized very quickly that I didn't want to pursue that because the industry was quite difficult to get into, that's what I say. And I ended up interviewing for a role as a support desk developer. Because I'd done some kind of web development, kind of hobbyist stuff, kind of before that. Managed to land that role, and that was at NetConstruct about just short of 10 years ago, be 10 years in August. And I've just sort of progressed through the company over the years, have a bit of back-end experience, and then have a bit of front-end UI experience as well, and currently leading the UI team.
What do you prefer? Well, you're leading the UI team, so that kind of answers the question. Do you prefer the back end or the front end? But obviously, if you're leading the UI team, it kind of answers that.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy both. I think I wouldn't really ever want to be in a position where I wasn't at least having a little bit of a hand in kind of the systems dev side of things.
Yeah. Any tips to stay up to date on all this ever-changing technologies for other developers?
I'll be honest, I just follow a lot of people on Twitter and just
Yeah.
try and keep up to date through that. Yeah, it's newsletters, Twitter. Everyone has different kind of feeds of content these days. So,
Right. Twitter is
yeah,
a great
YouTube
community
subscribe,
for
things like
that,
that.
for developers. Yeah, definitely. Very. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of the thought leaders
Right.
and kind of leads of projects that we all use have a pretty big Twitter presence. So
Yeah, definitely. Well, I got to ask you a personal question because I do that of every guest. And I'm gonna as you can tell by my background, I'm a movie buff. So I got to ask you, what's your favorite movie?
Forrest Gump
Forrest
every
Gump.
time.
It's
Yeah.
a fantastic movie, very classic movie. Any specific reason why, or?
It ticks every box. It's kind of got the comedy parts, the sad parts, the happy parts. It's just a really nice film. Love it.
Yeah,
And Tom Hanks
totally.
is just
Tom Hanks is
is an
amazing,
absolute
right?
legend.
Yeah, definitely. Yep, cool. All right, well, so we're ready for you. I'm going to go ahead and show you your screen right now. I'm going to go
Cool.
ahead and go on mute. Anybody that you're watching right now live, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'll ask Richard. Richard, if I have any questions, I'll jump in. Otherwise, I'm going to go on mute.
Cool. Okay, so this is essentially what we're going to end up with. It's a little piece of content, kind of lead content here, a form for us to put in what our favorite animal is. I'm a dog person myself, and we click the button, and then we get kind of the paid for or gated content. So the first things first, what is gated content? So most people, I think, will have encountered it in some form, be it a newsletter sign up in order to get access to a article or a registration in order to get access to a course, for example. Essentially, it's an exchange of data or money or something of value in order to get access to a piece of media, content, resource, whatever. So essentially, what we need to do is implement that exchange of content, and then also provide that piece of content once they've done that. And also, then there's a couple of hoops to jump through with Google in order to make sure that they can actually track and index the kind of full piece of content. That's not necessarily needed for every instance, but it's certainly very useful when it comes to articles in particular. So first things first, we're just going to jump into Kentico Content, which is the headless CMS that we're using. And if we take a look at the content model. So in our case, this is a very, very simple content model that we need. So we've only got a handful of fields here. So we've got a title, we have a slug. So this would be the kind of uniquely identifiable piece of content that lives in the URL itself. And then we have two fields, one for the lead content or the free content. So this is what you'll get before you do any exchange of data on there. And then gated content. So this is what you'll get once you've completed that exchange of data. And then also on the content side, I've gone in and created one of these already. So I'll just collapse that. And you can see here, we just got the content that you've seen in the complete version I've just demoed to you as well. So let's jump into the code. I've set up a blank version of a Next.js project, just with some skeleton structure in here, so that just to save a bit of time. And as I'm also using TypeScript, so that's my preferred language of choice rather than using plain JavaScript. So hopefully that won't cause any issues along the way, and people can still follow along with that, even if they don't have too much TypeScript experience. So we can see in here, the first thing we need to do is be able to get the content item from the content project via the SDK. So I've got a get gated content item file in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of copy and pasting, but I'll talk through the code as we go, purely just so we don't run over on time, because there's a reasonable amount of code to kind of get written in here. So this is our function in order to be able to retrieve the content from via the SDK. So let me just hide that window. So you can see in here, we've got a function, get gated content item. It's asynchronous, so it'll return a promise. And then we also have the option for preview, which is kind of something a little bit more specific to Next.js, but I will comment on it a little bit later on as well. So the first thing we do is we need to import the delivery client from the Kentico content delivery SDK. And then we initialize that with a project ID and a preview API key. So the project ID we can see in our content project if you go to the project settings and then API keys. And then you can see here we've got the project ID. You can click the copy button and put it in your environment variables file, which obviously I'm not going to show, but it's here on the right-hand side. Obviously, anything that you put in there, it's secrets, sensitive information, so you definitely don't want to share the full version of your environment file if you can help it. So you can see in here, we're passing that into the project ID field from the process.env object. And then we're doing the same thing for the preview API key. So this is something for content that allows us to access the draft versions of our content, which is very useful for content editors when wanting to preview content. So that gives us a client instance. And then from there, we can call into their API. And the way the SDK works is it's got a fluent API, so it's really nice to work with. So you can kind of read along and it just makes sense, so you can see what it's doing. So first thing we're doing is we want to get some items. We want to get items of type gated content. And that string there will map to the code name of our content model in here. So you can see this code name here is the exact same thing that we're passing in through to this type method. And then finally, the content SDK supports both observables and promises. In our instance, we just care about getting the data the one time, so we're just going to convert that to a promise. And then we're awaiting that to make sure we get the response itself. And then we're returning the first item in the response, because we know, at least in this example, that we only have one of these gated content items. So we can just return the first item. If this was a website with multiple articles, and they were, various of those were gated, then you would be passing in a parameter in here to be able to identify the one that you want you to retrieve. So this gives us our method to allow us to get the data from the content SDK. So the next step is in our page code. If we scroll right down to the bottom, so this is how we handle this with Next.js. So with Next.js, you have this method called getStaticProps, and this is called for any page that is using static generation in Next.js. So in here, I've left a few to-dos around the code just to make sure I don't miss anything as we go. But you can see the first thing we need to do here is fetch the content and return the props